Hi everybody, this is David, and welcome to Pupil Services and Non-Discrimination 655 through Viterbo University. I am your instructor for this course and look forward to having the next few months with you. So I'm going to try to make this quick. My normal editing software isn't available to me at the moment. I'm having an upgrade to my computer system so I can do some higher end editing and audio and video, and I do have a radio show out of Los Angeles. It's requiring me to do some updates to my system also. So I do have the class built and several updates to it for 2017. So you'll go in and find those. Please make sure that you download the syllabus. Look through the syllabus, download the rubrics, make sure you look through the rubrics. When people lose points in this class, typically it's because they don't look at the rubric before they do the assignment. So make sure that you do that. You'll notice that to contact me, I have my cell phone. You can give me a text. And typically I don't text very fast, so if it's something like, a quick question, I can respond to that. Otherwise, shoot me an email. That would be the best way. I'm typically checking my email every day for this class and checking the class. Now, we do have 14 people, which is a lot for this class. But at the same time, that means we have very rich discussion threads that will be happening. So there's a great plus side to that. If you want to be on a learning team, there's a learning team project. It has to do with a student with an allergy and considerations, whether it's ADA, 504, health plan, and it's not as straightforward as what you think, but you can email me and say, I want to be on a team with this person. I'll try to accommodate that. Otherwise, by the end of the week, I will be announcing teams, and then you will have a thread where you can post your contact information to your team members, and then it's really up to you how you want to go about starting to divide labor for that project. And if you look in the syllabus, you'll see when everything is due. There's a calendar and due dates. So the course is kind of split into two components. The first half, the first 5 weeks, you're responding to discussion threads. There's a lot of material that I'm putting out your way. A lot of articles to read. Now, there is not a text or materials you have to buy for the class. That's a good thing. But then once we get into, toward the end of class, once we get into March, March is really for you to work on one of your capstone projects, which is taking an analysis of your existing Pupil Services non-discrimination status for your district, and then also how you would go about improving, those conditions. So everything in class will lead you up with ideas on how to do that, what to look for, what documents to look for. I'm also looking for a strong qualitative approach, though, meaning that you are going to be interviewing principals, teachers, counselors, school psychs. You don't have to list people by name, and you can also decide to what level you want to protect. Not identifying positions, but just saying, I interviewed these 3 teachers at an elementary school. This is what they said. And questions such as, do you know the referral process if you have a student with a possible mental health concern or self-to-harm or harm at risk to harm self or others? How does your school, recognize diversity if you walk through the hallways, or you could do that yourself? Walk through the hallways. Are you seeing, the banners celebrating the football team, the posters on the lockers for athletics, but really nothing for forensics or nothing for, various different clubs or Gay Straight Alliance or things like that. So just things like that, to be aware of. There are a number of documents I share, some that organically I created. I did distribute throughout other districts, so those are free for me to distribute through this class. But a lot of them aren't super current. They're still very relevant. So they're they offer a template of ways to go about things. One example is, I think it was 6-7 years ago, I worked with my counselors, school psychologists, principals, and we just came up with questions that we wanted to ask our school attorney regarding pupil services. And generated these questions, got them to the attorney ahead of time, then had a sit down. And the attorney fielded these questions, and we expanded upon those and kind of did a write-up summary. Very productive, something I would recommend that you do. Now that document is outdated, I mean, because it's obviously 7 years old. But by looking at the document, you're going to get a good idea for how to go about that process in your district if you are assuming a role of pupil services and non-discrimination leadership or special education leadership. So my background is posted, my bio, and I do have a Ph.D. out of University of Wisconsin-Madison in educational leadership and policy analysis, a couple master's degrees, one in speech language pathology, another out of educational administration out of Superior. I serve around the country as an expert witness on school safety litigation, currently working on a case in another state. I worked with Hollywood movie producer this summer to work on an intruder film. I was a content expert and then eventually became a writer and a director. I have a multi-book deal with Roman and Littlefield to write various safety-themed books that will be coming out starting in late 2017, and then progression of 3 years following that. So I think I have like over 1,000 pages I need to write before too long here. And I do have a radio show on the 405 Media out of Los Angeles that airs at 9 o'clock at night, although it's getting bumped up to a 1 o'clock slot, which will run 7 days a week. I do record the show typically ahead of time, and it is safety themed, although it's I vary it up, and sometimes we'll do interviews. I'll be interviewing a former NFL player soon, talking about personal safety, not safety like if you get injured on the football field, but safety of what happens when you become a high-profile person like that. What do you do for your personal safety? Also did a wonderful interview with Jennifer Fritten. And these are things that you can find when you go through, if you subscribe at Safety PhD or go to the Safety Doc link that I have in my bio. But you can find some interviews I've done which would be very helpful to you as a school administrator. Jennifer Fritten, we talked about search and rescue dogs. She is a search and rescue dog, and she is dispatched sometimes by schools, by law enforcement, to look for students who have wandered from schools that might have autism. And I think twice just recently she was involved in that. So very interesting points to know. What I'm going to try to do, I had 12 years in a director role, and right now I serve as a speech language therapist and department chairperson for Wisconsin Center for the Blind and Visually Impaired, and also oversee and work with safety at the facility. And we have a 1/4 mile long facility with dorms and a pool and a track, and it's pretty crazy. And imagine safety in an environment where your students are visually impaired, plus probably half your staff. But it is really a phenomenal place to work, and it's helped me evolve my safety practices quite a bit. So, but I'm going to try to impart a lot of shortcuts and wisdom to you in this class, and kind of I will use something called a Fireside Chat, which I will record probably weekly, if not weekly, pretty close to weekly. It'll be something like this, 30-40 minutes long. It'll talk about what we talked about during that week as far as what was presented in the course. If some of you have some very interesting points that you post, or email me a question and say, would you elaborate more on this, I'll do that. Now with 14 people in class, I used to do shout outs for like everybody. I won't be able to do that during this class, like say, okay, this person, this person, this person. But I will do shout outs on definitely a couple people during each of the Fireside Chats. So please watch those and you can comment on those, but those are very timely. So if something happens too that's statewide or national that has to do with pupil services and non-discrimination, it happens, like 2 days ago, I can post and talk about it in our next Fireside Chat. So I used to record those all ahead of time, but I do those now much more timely, or I'll say like, hey, I posted this thread and there were a lot of responses and it seemed to go in this direction and I want to talk more about that, or this is, a couple people said this and I liked how this went, and here's a couple other ways to look at it. So one of the things too that I think I really bring to the class is the perspective of an expert witness, because I typically represent plaintiffs in litigation, and I don't do that in Wisconsin but in other states, so I get contacted and retained as an expert witness in plaintiffs which are litigating against schools, typically in pupil services and non-discrimination issues. So one of the things that I am doing is writing a book actually that is going to focus specifically on my role as an expert witness and what I look at immediately in districts, for typically what are almost always the weak points in pupil services and non-discrimination. And I've gone through, hundreds and hundreds of pages of depositions from people and IEPs and just specific things that I look for. Little things that I'll share along the way that if you can pay attention to those in the process, share those points with your staff, I just think you're going to be much better off in the event that anything does happen regarding litigation with your district. Not that it would, but things happen nowadays. But on the other hand, I can look at some cases and I can look at materials and say, staff did what they needed to do in this case. So one of the big things, and I'll talk about that, is, and this is where when you get into your pupil services non-discrimination, is if you have, for example, a bullying policy, how did you make students aware of that policy? How did you teach them what bullying is, what teasing is, what bullying isn't? What does your investigation look like? How do you document that? How do you get interperson or inter-rater reliability with the term of bullying versus teasing, and things like that? And what do your reports look like? How does that tie into counseling? All of these questions. One time, with a district that I was involved in with an expert witness case, they had in their board policy that they would post something about, I think it was suicide prevention in every school in a conspicuous, not inconspicuous, in a conspicuous area, so people would have that available. So one of the things when I worked with the attorney is they went in and asked the school then could right away, they just said, hey, we saw this in your policy, so please take us to these locations where these things, these documents are posted. And so they had the attorney plus his assistant with a video camera, and I think they found one location out of like 70 schools where it was actually posted. Well, that's when something like that, if that gets before a jury, you don't have a lot to stand on. So. So I'm going to share some of those perspectives and just strengthen you, not to frighten you, because I was a director, for 12 years and I wasn't, litigated against. But I also think I did a really good job being very prepared and very thorough. So I'm going to share those things with you. Pupil services has changed quite a bit versus when I initially started to teach this class. I've taught 14 years for Viterbo. I teach in the reading program, post-bachelor program, and educational leadership and special ed. So I teach a lot of core classes for Viterbo. I've taught face-to-face, taught blended, and was one of the first online instructors, and teach online, primarily right now. But some of the things we're going to touch on a little bit too are going to be contemporary topics that you'll be faced with as a pupil services director, and things such as white privilege, Black Lives Matter issues. We won't get real deep into that. I'm going to give you some resources, but those things are definitely going to be in your wheelhouse Those will be one of the things that, as a leader in Pupil Services and non-discrimination, you will be working with. So I do have materials that I've worked with a person who was very high up in the Department of Indian Bureau Affairs, who's a good friend and also a professor, shared some materials with me. And I'm not trying at all to convince you of anything or to put forth an agenda. No, but I want to make sure that you have some core knowledge, because these things are going to be presented to you in the role. Also, transgender is going to be very, very big for you, because it's just a topic that is emerging very rapidly in school districts. And districts are doing everything from, are they making a decision that all bathrooms now become, a unisex bathroom, or, how are they doing that when it comes to sports and things like that. But just things to think about, things to kind of be aware of and keep on your radar. And I'll give some examples of the ways some things have been handled. Now again, these are things like that don't. You're not the crux of all of these. These are just things, though, that now you're going to be very aware of in contemporary pupil services management. And the other part is allergy. Allergy has really just taken off. Where we used to have, we talked about autism taking off years ago. It's allergy now. Allergy to, we think of peanut allergies, but there's latex allergies, shellfish allergies. Certain ingredients and things like clay that's used in art projects. So having an awareness of allergy and allergy management, which is actually our case study, but I dealt a lot with allergy management, and one of the things, I think it's an extremely high priority for a Pupil Services director or special education director, through this role, to make sure that you're considering the discrimination that can come into play with allergies. For example, and this actually happened, a student chasing another student with a peanut butter sandwich, or you will get questions from parents of saying, well, if this school goes peanut free, then I can't send peanut butter sandwiches, and peanut butter is a great source of protein. It doesn't have to be refrigerated, and we can afford it, and that's for my my kid, and now I can't do that. And another thing is, these districts that go, we're going to be a peanut-free district. Well, I would say don't do that, because you can't guarantee that you're a peanut-free district. Are you going to guarantee when you have that holiday concert or that basketball game and 1,000 people come through the door that none of them have peanut residue on their hands, or that a student doesn't, have any, accidentally bring, peanut, anything that's cross-contamination, in them to the lunchroom, or have on their clothing or something like that. So I always go for more of like a peanut, awareness, or whatever, allergy awareness. And I think I'd give a demo of a policy that I include. So I do have new materials. And again, I will be posting videos, and they probably won't have a whole lot of like editing for intro and outro. I'm having this incredible system built. Believe me, it's going to be phenomenal versus what I have. But right now, using the camcorder, and I'll just kind of edit this together as an intro. But so again, I'm opening the class early. The class begins January 16th, but you can go in and you can tour it, which I advise you to do. Some people haven't used Moodle before. They get a little nervous. So take the time to go in and to use it. If you have any questions, let me know. Viterbo has a lot of tutorials. They work great. And otherwise, please don't do a lot of posting until class starts. Like, don't go in and do all your posting right away. And one of the things too is, like, the first day of class, you need to post. You need to post your bio the first day of class, and I have it listed. Part of that has to do with like registering who's there for class, and it has to do with financial aid and just things like that. But just make sure on the first day of class you go in and you post your bio. I already posted mine, so you are going to know about me. But again, I'm going to hopefully share a lot of information from the field that's going to be very helpful and connect you up with some very salient resources, have very good discussions in the Fireside Chat. But when you do get to your syllabus and you look and you kind of look at that march and you're like, we don't have a whole lot going on, that really is meant for you to get out and to talk to people and to visit some of the sites within your district and do a little research on what is available on the DPI site and what is not available regarding your existing Pupil Services non-discrimination site. Even if it's a walkthrough of some of your buildings and what do you see? Do you see multiculturalism represented in your buildings or not, or even in lunch menus, or just things like that. One of the projects we have too is you do have a FEMA course that you will complete. It is of no cost to you, and the links, I go through and I check all the links, so hopefully they work, but occasionally a link goes dead, so please let me know. But the FEMA course will take you a few hours to complete. It's instant command system, and I do suggest that you save all of the documents that go with that. They provide you a ton of very useful PDFs. But it's important as a Pupil Services administrator to understand how ICS works, instant command systems, because let's say you have an evacuation off-site and you have to take kids and they have medications. How are you going to manage that and interface that with police and EMS? If a tornado strikes or if there's a severe weather event, you might not be a top priority for a response. The responders might quadrant off areas and get to you at some point. Also, if a student would wander away that would have autism, what does that look like? And then what happens when people self-dispatch? How does that impact your instant command systems? Believe it or not, if a child wandered away and had autism, and that call goes through to the police and your staff are aware of it, they might be texting their friends or whatever, and pretty soon you've got 500 people showing up at the school all wanting to go by foot looking for a child. While there's a good side to that, it can definitely complicate a search, and it can actually kind of drive a child, and it can compromise evidence that's out there, which if you watch the video, which I will post the video that I did with Jennifer Fritton, the search and rescue video, which I just did a couple weeks ago. But if there is anything that happens, Pupil Services related, bomb threat, stuff like that, whatever it could be, it is important to understand instant command systems, and also active shooter drills, how instant command systems interface, but especially with medically fragile children and children with autism. So there are a number of courses that FEMA offers, like active shooter and things like that, but you get plenty of that through your schools. That's just been saturated. But a core understanding of ICS, just a core understanding, I think is very, very critical. So but yeah, any questions on the class? If you have resources, please post them. There is a place to do that. And the neat part about that is, then other people don't have to recreate the wheel. So as long as you have permission from your district. Last year, a couple students posted IEP agendas, and those are really helpful. And they also posted some documents that they used when they went through textbook adoptions to look that the textbooks were representing, different cultures and different perspectives and things like that. So if you have anything like that, yeah, please go ahead and share it. So, but again, we look at getting started in that first 5-6 weeks, very intense with a lot of discussion, and then after I think week 5, we don't have discussion threads. Then we start to shift more into your FEMA certificate, which will take you a few hours to complete that, and then you're going to get into your kind of meat of your project, which is going to be your non-discrimination assessment. And again, don't just pull data for that. Whatever you do, don't just go on and pull data and say, here's our suspension rate. Every 5 years, schools have to do a non-discrimination report anyway, and part of that even includes like making sure you have equitable ways that students can try out for sports. So if you have a student in a wheelchair, how do they try out for baseball? These are things that you need to have in place, and it will fall on you as a Pupil Services Director. So, but again, you can give me those things, and all your districts have to do those, but also do a qualitative side of talking with people and getting perspectives. And I am going to post an article that I wrote recently about the Community Health Needs Assessment. I call it China for short. Part of the Affordable Care Act. And it's where every hospital, so if you type a local hospital up near your school, plus the Community Health Needs Assessment, you'll find one every 3 years they're done. And it talks about community needs, and it often represents, it has a school section in it too, saying like this many students graduate, or this many students have access to health care, this many students don't. And the weird thing is, like, a lot of school folks never even know that those exist. And some do, and some have their place at the table and set those goals. And in those cases, what I usually see is a strong mental health network there. If you're giving like a youth mental health risks or a youth risk behavior survey, YRBS, that's not a mental health screener. It's not meant to be. So you should be working with your hospital, and you can do that through this Community Health Needs Assessment, which is really hospital-led, which is nice because schools have to lead a lot of things. But anyway, let me wrap this up. It is late, actually. I just got back from a run. I am a late-night runner. Not a wanderer, just a late-night runner. And I do have spikes, so I did learn that the hard way after doing a couple slips last year in winter. And I do, want to encourage you to contact me, whenever you want. And typically, if it's an email, I'll get back to you in a day. Again, now we do have a bigger class. It's 14. It's 14 people. So if you make a post and I don't respond to it, I'm not going to respond to every post. I typically will try to read every post, but I'm not going to be able to respond, to every post, because during a day, there could be 50, 60 posts that are made. This, that's just not practical. But you'll find that your peers will respond, to you, and we'll have very good discussions. So, again, thank you for registering for this class. We always have a very strong turnout. I think last year we had like 18 or 20 students in this class, and 14 again is a very large turnout. Definitely a demand for Pupil Services directors in our schools, and the role has really evolved and changed. And once we get later into one of our discussions too, we'll talk just about the medical aspect that goes into that. One of the things that I do is I manage a lot of very high needs medical students. Very high needs. And it might sound a little scary, but actually, once you do that and understand it and have a process, it works well. But again, we see things in schools that we probably didn't see so much before, like private duty nurses, and I wrote an article called the Right to Select Methodology, where in one of the districts I worked in, an outside autism agency was coming in and trying to take a child out of class and pull them out of class and work with them. And that's a no-no. Like, that's a you just don't you don't allow that to happen. That is your school time. So those type of things need to happen outside of time if it's a third-party provider who's coming in trying to get their minutes with a child with autism. So, all right, wishing you the best. Thank you for 6:55. You do not have to access class until the 16th, but please make sure you go on the 16th. Don't do a lot of posting, if any posting, before then and now. And again, I do open it up where it's like week 1, and then eventually be week 2, then week 3, then week 4. And once we get about halfway through, I'll just open up the rest of the class so you can see what's there. But for the first few weeks, I just open it up kind of a week at a time. And the reason I do that is, in the past, if I've opened the whole thing up at once, there's always 1 or 2 people that get in and they try to complete the entire class in a weekend, which you can't do anyway the way that that it's set up in the way that you earn points, but I do want, where you're focused on a week at a time and very kind of digestible material. So again, thank you for being part of this class, and look forward to similar fireside chats, which will be kind of in this format. And as far as gradebook too, I want to share with that. The gradebook will be updated, maybe every 3-4 weeks. I'll make a post when I update it. So if you go in and you don't see your grade updated, don't freak out. Like, wait until I made a post saying I've updated grades. Go in and check. And then after that, if something looks a little bit askew, let me know. But I have a pretty good way that I'm always monitoring and checking that. So again, take care, and thank you very much for being a part of 655 and being a part of Viterbo University. And I'm glad that you've chosen to pursue a special education pupil services non-discrimination licensure. Thank you.